Blair here of Chaos Costumes to teach you more about Nomad with fun little projects, because why not? I've really been enjoying these projects and I hope you guys are too, but without further ado, let's go. So if you remember last time, we made these adorable mushroom shelves that were super functional. This time, we're going to make a lantern. And I'll switch this matte cap to the nacky blue that I like. Now take a good, long look at the sphere and say goodbye, because we don't need it. Bye, sphere. Today we're going to be working with a box. And I'm going to make this box a little bigger and a wee bit taller. And we'll clone that box because we're going to use that as a tool to boolean out some walls. So just with the gizmo and clicking that little circle around it, the orange one, I'm just going to make it 0.96 smaller. That gives me some nice hardy walls. Then I can just go in and make it a little bit taller so that it can boolean out the top and bottom. I'll just subtract that shape from the original box. There we go. Now we have the base of our lantern. Now I want to get funky fresh with it and add a pattern. And how do you do that in Nomad? Well, I'm going to show you. I'm just going to go in with a box and snap the rotation to 45 degrees, increase the division, and validate it. Now I'll just make this longer than our shelled box. And I'm just going to trim off the sides with symmetry enabled. I have this nice little gem shape. I don't know what would it be called. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hexagon. That's the one. Yes. And I'll make it a little bit smaller. And since I made it smaller, I have to lengthen it again. And to that, I'm going to add an array. But if I don't change the pivot point, it builds it to the side. So let's fix the pivot to just align it. And then we can add the array. Now, I'm not going to do it on both sides because I'm going to first symmetry, but I just want to build out a pattern along this face. So I'm going to mess with the X and Y axes of the array. The shapes aren't quite as lined up and close enough, so I'm just going to take one of these little guys, and since it's on the array, it'll modify all of them and shrink it down, and maybe lengthen it a little bit, and squish it. I can go in and modify the array to the count that I want, which is 5. And that looks about right. I just want to make sure it extends past the little shell we made, so we can use that as a Boolean tool. Now that I'm happy with this, I'm just going to join the array and the box, and I'll decimate it because it is at like 1.4 million. The count usually increases substantially when you combine an array. But now that I'm happy with that half, I can go in and force symmetry. And I accidentally clicked cut, mirror, and split, which is silly of me. So I have to fix that. And I'll just join those two things. And now I can clone that and rotate it by 90 degrees. And now I have it on both sides. And it makes this kind of cool waffle texture on top. Now I want to add another box to add details in between these little diamonds. So I'll just make it a wee bit smaller, a lot bit longer, and rotate it by 45 degrees. And I'll change the pivot after I did that. And add an array back in there. Now, if I was smart, I would have memorized or typed in a specific amount that the array is duplicated by and the distance and all that, but I didn't do that. So I'm just gonna eyeball it. Going to the good enough department. Population me. Like, is this look good? I don't know. Yes, good enough. Yeah, you can do things precisely if you type in numbers, like I should have, but you know, we're making art. I think that's good enough. Now I can just combine that array in the box, like I did with the other ones. And use cut mirror this time. So I'm not making too many shapes. And there we have it. There's the little guys in between the big guys. Just need to make them a little bit longer. Now that I'm thinking about it, I should decimate it before I duplicated it. Now I can clone it and rotate it. Hindsight's 2020. I should have centered the gizmo before I did that, but I want you guys to see my mistakes. So Nomad has issues if you try to boolean out too many things and too many layers at the same time, so we're just going to do one at a time. So I'll cut these out, and I'll cut this cross section out, and I'll cut these little guys out, and then my final step is to cut that last section out, but it's lined up incorrectly. I mean, it looks cool, but it's not what I want. I'll just scooch that on over where it's supposed to be. That's a lot better. Now I can cut that out. I'm just gonna make these little corner caps. add to the structural integrity? I don't know. It just looks cool. But I'm just going to make those with the box. Make it nice and petite. And then add a mirror so that I can get all 4 corners with one shape. And I'm sick and tired of messing with this uncentered object. So what I do is I go in to the gizmo and just move origin. And now it's in the center again. Now I can work with this shape without having to move it around so much. Now we'll go back into the mirror and just have the symmetry on the X and Z axis, so it's on all 4 corners. Now I'll make a clone of that box. I keep wanting to call it a cube. I mean, it is a cube, but it labeled a box in this program, and use that as a Boolean tool to just cut out the middle of that corner, so it's not poking on the inside. Now that I have a frame, I'm gonna start adding a base, but I'm gonna use a tube, so I have more control over it. Because what's cool about the tube is that you can make it a square. I'll just drag this down and turn on the grid with the magnet so that I can keep it straight on. And I'll change the radius a couple times so that I can make it flare out a little bit. Now what I can do is just clone that shape again, pull it down and around so that I can make a second segment of this base. Now just to make the lid, I'm going to take those 2 tubes and just clone them and move them up. Ever since the update, the gizmo's been doing weird stuff, so I'm going to plop that gizmo in the center with the pivot. That lid. I want to modify this lid a smidge. Make it a little taller. And now that I'm happy with the proportions of the lid, I'm going to add a little decorative top using a tool I don't think I've taught you how to use, which is the lathe tool. And I'm going to build it on a path with the grid enabled so I have a little bit more control. Just kind of futz around with it until I get a shape that I want. It's a pretty simple tool to use to make very intricate shapes that are perfectly round. Really, the sky's the limit with the lathe tool. Now to add a top to this lantern, I'm going to use a torus. I'll scooch that torus up here and rotate it by 90 degrees. I'll increase the inner radius so it's a little thicker. And actually reduce the division quite a bit so I have this more faceted shape. I just want to rotate it so it's a little flatter on here, and I'll fix the pivot. But I'm realizing I can get a better look at it with the grid turned on to see if it's level. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least nice enough. I'm pretty happy with it overall, but I think it can do with some more facets. So I'm going to validate it and multi-res it a couple times with linear subdivision turned on so that when I do trim it, it doesn't get all weird. So I'll go in with the trim tool on rectangle with the symmetry turned on to the Z-axis also. I can clip both sides at the same time. Now it's looking pretty fancy. Now I can just make this torus a little wider with the gizmo. And I want to make this torus handle loopy thingy a little bit more interesting, so I'm just going to duplicate that and resize it to the outside. And then duplicate it again, make this a little smaller. So I can actually use that as a Boolean tool for the middle so it's not super sharp. And there we go. Got a neat little handle thingy. Make this lathe situation line up a little better to the handle. So I'm just going to futz around with that a little bit. Now I want to add a little bit more interest to this lid. So I'm just going to add some more points and change the radius. There's just so many interesting things you can do with the tube tool. I like it a lot. Now I'm just going to make a little inset part to this lid so that it kind of seats in nicely. So I'm just going to use a box, not a cube, a box, whatever. And turn on the X-ray so I can see what I'm doing and give it enough clearance on the inside. And shrink that down just so it stops right before you can see it through the lantern. Now I can take all of this and hide it so I can see what I'm working with. And now I can select the lid and join that. So it's all one piece, or at least all one layer. It's not all one piece yet, unless you Boolean all everything together. Now I can just take this mirror and box and join them. And then I'll hide the lid. And I'm looking at these little corner pieces. I'll just trim them down so they're flush. If I typed in numbers and stuff, it would have been perfect, but we're going off of vibes entirely today. And you know what? I want to add a little detail here before I combine everything. Make it match the lid a little better. There we go. Now it's more interesting, and I can combine everything. And now, I'm actually going to name my layers before I'm done. Wild. Mostly because I'm done fussing with them, and I will need to know what's what for the next step, which is making a little candle holder out of a cylinder. So I'm going to solo that, change it so I'm only modifying one radius, and this radius is going to be 19, and these will be millimeters. And I'll just make it an arbitrary height that looks good enough for me. Increase the division so it's a little smoother, and then duplicate that cylinder and make it a little larger than our original cylinder, seeing what our clearances are, and adding a tube so I can make this look a little more interesting. And turn off snapping. Jeez. And just change the radius so it looks more interesting. And I'll increase the division, and I have no idea how I got them to separate. I think I pressed and held something. I'll have to investigate that a little later. Now I can combine the base and then hide the middle and boolean that out. And there we go. We have our little candle holder thing for our lantern in the correct size. Now we can go in and take our microscopic lantern and make it proportional. So I'll resize everything but the cylinder so I can get the candle holder to fit inside the lantern. Just use the X-ray tool to make sure my clearances are good and everything overlaps nicely, and take all this nonsense. And I tried joining it together and it named it cylinder. It seems like the last thing you select, it picks up that name. So that's nice. And I'll decimate it just so it's a nice small file size. And then take the lid and decimate it. Make sure the geometry still looks good. How far I'm pushing it. And now we can save the components and export it to our drive. Now let's slice this bad boy. So I'll just import these two things. Open it, select no, and unfortunately I will need another plate because these are too big. Just scooch that over there. Repair it because I didn't boolean anything together, so it's real nasty. This guy, repair him. Slicing is pretty straightforward. I just want to make sure I build support underneath this lip. And for some reason, there's support going all the way up here, which is totally not necessary. So I'm going to go in and fix that. I have no idea what it's doing. I don't see any like checkerboard texture there, so I don't know. I'm just going to force it not to build support there. And now it should be good. Ta-da! I'm not a big fan of this line going up the back of this lathe section, but there's not much I can do about that. I'll slice this guy. This guy should be pretty straightforward and no support necessary. Looking pretty good. Alright, let's print him. See what happens. Hopefully successfully. You never know what could happen with a 3D printer. about you, but I like stuff that does stuff, and especially stuff that glows. And bonus round, I'm teaching you how to make stuff that does stuff, which is even better, right? I hope. Also, how many of you actually use the program? That's what I want to know. Or how many of you are here for the vibes? If you have an answer for me, leave a comment down below. And if you like what I do, like the video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Every little bit helps. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.